Every day, people across Maryland trust doctors and hospitals to help them overcome illness and prolong their lives. But what happens when the care you receive causes more harm than the disease for which you were seeking care? We're here to talk much more about this and what to do if you've been a victim of medical malpractice is local attorney Paul DeMore. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here. Look, this is a huge area of law, medical malpractice, we know, and you've worked both sides of this, both for the hospitals previously and now for victims of it. What are things people need to be thinking about first in these situations?
Well, I think what folks should be aware of first and foremost is in 2016, researchers at Johns Hopkins actually published a study in the British Medical Journal that found that medical negligence may now be the third leading cause of death in the United States. Wow. So it's something we truly have to watch out for. And the first thing I tell folks when they ask me, what should I know or what can I do to try to avoid being a victim of medical negligence is, I tell them, be your own advocate. You want to ask questions. You want to understand everything that's happening with regard to your medical care. And if you're going into the hospital, you want to bring someone with you who can ask those questions when you can't. Because there's times, obviously, when you're under anesthesia or you're unconscious or you're on a lot of medication. So you want someone that you trust to be able to advocate for you. And a lot of times, it's that person who can help avoid errors happening to you.
It makes total sense. Look, it's a second set of eyes. It's someone to help manage your care. And if things start to get a little out of whack, something's not quite right, this is a second person who can attest to that, correct?
That's true. But one of the things well, first of all, I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression.
Sure.
Obviously, you want to trust your medical providers. They know what they're doing. They're highly trained. But you want to trust but verify is a famous old saying, right?
Yes.
From I think President Reagan may have said that. Trust but verify. So you're entitled to ask questions and understand what's going on. But you're right. A second advocate is a second set of eyes. Mm-hmm. And then if you think that things aren't going the way they should be, there's a few steps that you can take to then preserve your right to find out.
Okay.
One of the first things you want to do, and let me just back up a second and say, if you've had an unintended medical consequence, you've had a surgery that didn't come out the way you thought it should have, you've taken a drug, then you've had some side effects that are serious, and you think that you're worse now than you were before, you're going to want to start to suspect whether or not you've been the victim of malpractice. We call it an unintended consequence.
I see.
But no one can tell you whether that unintended consequence was something that could have happened but for someone's negligence, or if someone did or if one of your providers did something wrong.
I see.
So let me give you a few things to keep in mind if you think
Sure.
that something's gone wrong. First thing is document everything. Take notes or have someone take notes for you. Who you spoke to, what they said, the date of the conversation, what information was imparted to you, what questions you had, and what the answers were.
Okay.
Having notes is a great way for someone to try to recreate what happened in your medical care. The other thing you want to do is, if you have had a really bad outcome, have photographs. It's much harder to describe what's happened to you than to show someone what's happened to
Sure. And we all have those cameras with us at all times now.
Ask people's permission to take photographs of them if they're in the photograph, but you can always have photographs taken of yourself. The next thing you should always do is talk to an experienced medical malpractice attorney.
Sure.
Bring all the information that you've gathered to an experienced lawyer. You would never ask a foot surgeon to perform brain surgery on you. You're not going to want any lawyer to look at a potential medical malpractice case. Find someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Correct. The third piece of advice that I would give to people is have a face-to-face meeting with a medical malpractice attorney. Once you find one you like, call, set up, bring all of the materials that you've collected, sit down, have a good conversation with that person. The same good conversation I'm recommending that you have with your doctor before you get treatment, have that conversation with an experienced medical malpractice attorney before you decide who you're going to hire.
Absolutely.
The fourth piece of advice that I would give to our viewers is get real answers. Sometimes doctors tend to speak in medical lingo when they talk to us about what's going on.
Sure.
I find that medical malpractice lawyers are able to speak to people in plain English.
Yeah.
We can look at medical records and say, well, this is what the doctor really should have been telling you in plain English versus the medical speak.
And what would be the final point, Paul, as we wrap things up?
Well, let's wrap it up and understand the time limits. Generally, you have 3 years to bring a malpractice case if you think that medical negligence from the time that the event occurred. Calculating statutes of limitations is a little tricky, but in general, just use this rule of thumb, 3 years.
Gotcha. All right, so important to keep that timeline at top of mind as well. Well, Paul, a lot of information there, sir.
A lot of information, and always please feel free to go to our website, DemoriaInjuryLaw.com. Anything we talk about on this show, I put on the website in far more detail so our viewers can learn more.
We'll do that. A complete resource center there, we know. Paul, thanks again for coming back here on Midday Maryland. And we will be back with more right after this. Stay tuned.